What if some of your deepest fears, your social anxiety, your chronic stress, and the scarcity mindset that holds you back every day actually came from your parents? Not through what they taught you, not through how they raised you, but through your biology itself. This is not a philosophical idea, this is now a scientific reality. And the research behind it will completely change how you see yourself and the struggles you carry. Let me start with one of the most remarkable scientific discoveries of the last decade. In 2013, researchers Brian Diaz and Kerry Ressler from Emory University conducted a groundbreaking experiment published in the journal Nature Neuroscience. They exposed male mice to a specific cherry blossom scent while simultaneously giving them mild electric shocks. Over time, the mice learned to fear that particular smell. Their bodies responded with stress and anxiety every time that scent appeared, even without any electric shock. So far, that is straightforward, but here is where the experiment became extraordinary. The offspring of those mice who had never experienced any electric shock, who had never been exposed to the training, showed the exact same fear response to the same smell. And it did not stop there. Even the grandchildren of the original mice, the third generation, showed the same heightened sensitivity and fear response to a scent that none of them had ever been trained to fear. The fear had been passed down through the DNA of the sperm itself. This process is called transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. And what it tells us is something profound. The experiences, traumas, and fears of one generation do not simply disappear. They can leave a biological mark on the genes that is then carried into the next generation and even the generation after that. Now, here is what this means for you as a human being. Research on human populations has confirmed that this same process happens in people. A 2024 study on Syrian refugee families found measurable epigenetic differences in the children and grandchildren of those who had experienced war and violence, even when the younger generations had never personally experienced those events. Studies on Holocaust survivors and their descendants found that the children of survivors showed altered stress hormone levels and heightened anxiety responses that could not be explained by their own personal experiences alone. Research on communities that experienced severe famine, extreme poverty, chronic fear, or prolonged social oppression has repeatedly found traces of that experience in the biology of the generations that followed. So think about this honestly. If your grandparents lived through war, extreme poverty, prolonged fear, or a society built on scarcity and survival, some of that experience may have left a biological trace that is now part of how your nervous system responds to the world. If your parents carried deep anxiety, chronic stress, a fear of failure, or a belief that the world is fundamentally unsafe, some of that may have been passed to you not just through what they said and how they behaved, but through your very biology. This means that if you struggle with social anxiety, a tendency to expect things to go wrong, an instinct to shrink rather than step forward, or a deep difficulty in believing that good things are truly available to you, there is a very real possibility that you are not simply weak or broken. You may be carrying something that was never originally yours to carry. And that changes everything about how you should relate to yourself. The key message I want you to take from this video is one of the most important things you can hear. Do not take everything personally. The fear you feel in social situations may not be evidence of your inadequacy. It may be a signal inherited from a generation that genuinely needed that fear to survive. The voice in your head that constantly warns you about failure and danger may not be your voice at all. It may be an echo of someone who came before you, living in circumstances far harsher than yours, doing their best to protect the generations that would follow. Now, I also want to address something that I think is deeply important. Your current thinking patterns are not only shaped by family. The society you grew up in, the economic conditions around you, the political environment that surrounded your parents and grandparents, all of these leave marks too. A community that lived under oppression, scarcity, or instability for generations develops collective patterns of thinking that get passed down through both biology and culture. A scarcity mindset, a distrust of opportunity, a habit of preparing for the worst. These are not personal failures. They are adaptations, intelligent responses to genuinely difficult environments. The problem is that they can persist long after the environment has changed. And that is where awareness becomes your most powerful tool. Because here is what the science also confirms. Epigenetic changes are not permanent destinations. They are starting points. Understanding that some of your fears and negative patterns may have origins outside of your own personal experience is not an excuse to stay stuck. It is an invitation to stop fighting yourself so harshly and start working with yourself more intelligently. When you understand where something comes from, you can begin to consciously rewrite it. You can recognize the fear as inherited rather than factual. You can separate the ancestral signal from the present reality. You can choose a response that belongs to the life you are actually living, not the life your grandparents survived. In an upcoming video, I will share a specific method that uses journaling to replace deeply embedded negative thought patterns with new ones rooted in where you actually are today. But for now, the most important thing I want you to walk away with is this. You are not your fears. You are not your anxiety. You are not your negative thinking. Some of what you carry was placed there long before you arrived. And knowing that, truly knowing it, is the first and most powerful step toward putting it down. Alright, that is it for today. I will see you in the next video. Take care.